Good morning. You're now listening to Kingston Community Radio, airing on FM 92.5 and AM 920 WGHQ, Kingston, New York. This programming is brought to you by our listeners and corporate underwriters who are interested in presenting local community radio. The opinions expressed on this program do not represent those of Pamel Broadcasting or Kingston Community Radio. Listeners are encouraged to send in $10 per month to help bring this program to you. Mail your contributions to Kingston Community Radio, Post Office Box 4364, Kingston, New York 12402. For more information or to donate online, visit our website at mykcr.org. Good morning. This is Dan Gaddis bringing you into the greatest snowfall of the year so far. And it's Monday, January 17th, and 29 degrees right now here in Uptown Kingston. And thank you for being a part of Kingston Community Radio and tuning in right now. And we'll be right back after these messages.
Long ago, you wouldn't think of galloping on a horse while doing calligraphy, and you wouldn't have attempted to ride your bike while typing a letter. Yet you think you can safely operate a multi-ton vehicle while texting? Behind the wheel is no place to multitask. If you want to BRB, drive now and text later. Lives depend on it.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Did you just look down at your phone? You did it again, didn't you? You know, you're flying down the road in a 3-ton hunk of steel, and a text takes your eyes off the road for an average of 5 seconds. At 55 miles per hour, that's long enough to travel the length of a football field and cause some serious damage. Turn it off. Trust me, whatever it is, you'll live.
Learn more at StopTextStopWrecks.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
Hi, my name is Jackie Lovezzo. I'm from Lake Katrine, and I support Kingston Community Radio because it is an invaluable resource to the community and its residents.
And you're listening to KCR, Kingston Community Radio, WGHQ, 920 on your AM dial, 92.5 FM, and streaming online at mykcr.org. KCR is talk radio, the call-in show, so our number is 331-9255, 845-331-9255. And visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/groups, KCR920. And today is a Medical Monday. And, I'll do the weather later, okay? We already know about the weather. Hi, Dr. Eric Stamberg. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to this morning's show. I'm here with Robin Baker. Say good morning.
Good morning.
And
sounds like she's over in the kitchen making coffee.
You're you're close to the truth right now.
Okay, excellent.
You know, and I'm looking out the window at I'm trying to remember the line from the old Simon and Garfunkel song, the freshly fallen something of snow.
Freshly fallen silent shroud of snow.
There you go. Freshly fallen silent shroud of snow. It sounds like it's alliterative, you know, and Paul Simon was trying to write like in a high school poetry class when he wrote that song.
I think it's actually because he had good high school poetry teachers, he did a damn good job with that lyric.
Oh, that's what I'm looking out at now. A freshly fallen silent shroud of snow, and it's beautiful. Anyway, welcome to this morning's show. Rob and I are once again doing the show via telephone. Two reasons, I guess. When first is the weather, and the second reason is, I had a little bout with COVID. I'll announce to the listening audience. Overall, my symptoms were relatively mild and tolerable. I have been fully vaccinated and boosted. And then the issue whether I was still contagious or not and how long you should isolate for. It has been 10 days since the date of the test, and that's the conservative measure. Remember the CDC kind of controversially or adjusted guidelines, and abruptly adjusted guidelines about 2-3 weeks ago, much to everyone's kind of confusion. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it made everything a little confusing for everyone.
Yeah, can you hear Robin okay?
She'll have to get closer to your device. I have a question, and I think that a lot of our constituency would have questions too about what were the symptoms that you experience.
Well, it's a statement that is true, but maybe not true. At the same time, when people describe COVID like a bad cold, in a way, for me, that's kind of what it was. Like, it was around 4 days of pretty bad fatigue, nasal and chest congestion, cough, sore throat, feeling feverish. Whether or not I don't think I ever had an actual fever. I always say that to patients. Big difference between feeling feverish and having a fever. When you're sick, you tend to have chills and might feel you have a fever. It doesn't necessarily mean you do. A lot of viruses, including COVID, will frequently not cause a fever. It's one of the things, I think, in the beginning when we put a lot of emphasis on checking your daily temperature, which is helpful data, but it certainly doesn't put you in the clear. Yeah, if you're still having some symptoms, you have to be vigilant and cautious about it. Anyway, so it lasts about 3 or 4 days, and then another 3 or 4 days of just kind of not feeling great, but not horrible. In a different era, I guess I should caution and say this, but in a different era, I'm not even so sure I would have taken a day off from work. I would have probably tanked myself up with meds and worn a mask and I guess I shouldn't say that. I probably would have missed about 2 days, but I certainly would not have missed a whole week, which is what it wound up being.
That's a good measure of what 2 vaccines can do for getting exposure, and 2 vaccines plus the booster, I should say. What it gives you the ability to just ride it out for what it is. It's it's a virus that causes cold and flu symptoms. Correct?
Right.
Okay.
And so I've been cleared by the health department. I've been I was impressed. I was impressed to get a call from the New York State Department of Health 24 hours after a test was done, informing me of the results. I was impressed with the elements of my company, with the employee health section, to also be vigilant about symptoms. But I've been cleared to return to work on even a couple of days ago. So what's confusing, and I think it is going to confuse a lot of people, is different standards that different places are going to hold. For example, my employer, which is New Vance Health, a medical establishment, under the supervision of not just physicians, but specialist physicians and infectious disease specialists, do not require a test to return to work. And the CDC guidelines kind of don't really require a test. But then they got a little wishy-washy, and they said, well, maybe you might want to get a test after 5 days to make sure you're negative. Right? Did you hear that, Robin?
I did.
So I think that confused people as well. But people might be in a scenario where their employer or other scenarios might insist on a test prior to returning to work. It's not really based in the science of it. I'm trying to log on to something here. So it's based kind of just almost on a extra level of caution and making yourself kind of want to feel okay about it. But it is true that the remnants of the virus can reside in your nasal passageways for weeks. So that's confusing a lot of people. Would you agree with that?
Right. So you're not actively sick and you're not contagious, but you might test positive. Right,
and that's an important thing to remember. But if hospital, a nursing home, an employer, school district, wants to adopt that standard, I guess that's their prerogative.
Correct.
We have another issue, which is really kind of putting pressure on people to kind of get back to work, which is an interesting thing. What's the priority here, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're here. We live to tell the tale. And the good news is that it does appear that the Omicron surge has crested here in New York. New York, similar to the first time we got COVID, which is about 2 years ago now. It's in March of 2020. This surge hit us kind of first, and it's going to ripple through the rest of the country. And I really think we're on a national level, we're still in for a very rough, probably 4 to 6 week period of surging cases. But also the bad cases tend to lag the surge by around 2 to 3 weeks. So even though numbers appear to have crested, and I'm going to give some numbers in a couple of minutes, we're still going to see hospitals kind of fall with COVID cases.
Just because of sheer numbers.
The service over at Northern Duchess is still about 40% COVID patients or COVID-related patients. That's another source of confusion too. Because I hear that in the press. Well, not everyone who's counted as COVID really has COVID. They just kind of tested positive.
Positive, you're positive.
I would counter that. I think there's still amazing underdiagnosis. There are a lot of people who never get tested, or the test maybe is falsely positive. Remember, a test can be falsely wait, I'm sorry.
Falsely negative.
Falsely negative, thank you. A test can be falsely negative. It's pretty unusual to have a test be falsely positive. You know how a test can be falsely positive? If someone had it, maybe they had it a month ago, and it's still kind of living in their nose, like we just talked about. That could be, you could maybe call that a falsely positive test.
Doc, that's very confusing to the layperson.
Yes, it is. How can we resolve this confusion on the freshly fallen silent shroud of snow?
Not really sure.
Anyway. All right, so here's an article from the Freeman. And I'm going to open it back up here. I thought I already did. There it is. No, still not. There it is. Okay, so this is from the 13th. What date say? 17th. This is from Friday. All right, and it's the headline from the Freeman was that, oh gosh, my kids would, what would my kids do right now?
They say, okay, boomer.
Yeah, they would tease me for being slow with the computer. All right, the headline was Ulster County active COVID-19 cases surged by more than 400 again. So this was from Friday. There was a surge, around 7,000 current infections. So, however, a lot of changes in a couple of days. The positivity rate, I'm going to pull up another article.
Careful with the phone there.
What's that, Dan?
It's rubbing against something, and just careful with the phone.
Okay.
Keep it clear and out in the open.
Right.
For you. Okay.
The positivity rate in Ulster County, though, has gone down over the past couple of days, which is the good news. So the case numbers are up, but already, since this article came out, there's some evidence that the positivity rate has gone down. In the state of New York, the positivity rate went down from 23% to 13%. And that comes from an article on CNN this morning. So that's the good news, that this surge appears to have crested, but there's still going to be a lot of sick people. So one thing I learned is that in addition to being vaccinated, people have to be properly boosted. I find that a lot of people, that's sort of what happened when people had to be admitted with COVID. When you asked them about it, yes, have you been vaccinated? The answer was yes. And then the answer was, well, when were you vaccinated? And they said, January of 2021, which was a year ago. So they missed their opportunity to get the booster. So that's just one more reminder for people to get that. You agree with that?
Makes a big difference.
Yeah. All right. What else should we tell people?
Stay vigilant.
Yeah.
Everyone's tired of all of it, except people are still getting sick. So please stay vigilant.
Right. And Ulster County has a new testing site over at SUNY New Paltz. This is, again, from the article in the Freeman on Friday. It's going to be open Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., and you can make an appointment. It has kind of a weird email address in the article. I don't think it's going to be helpful to give this email address out, but keywords are SUNY New York Test. What else? There's also the county's going to be giving out some N95 masks. That's something we probably should mention, is that not all masks are created equal. You know, I looked at one data that says a basic cloth mask, kind of like a homemade mask, really will cut down transmission maybe by 20 to 25%. A regular surgical mask, which is what most people have been wearing, will cut down transmission to about 50%. And then the N95 mask will cut down transmission somewhere between 75 and maybe even higher to 90%. And then if you have two people both wearing N95 masks, the risk of transmission between those two people is pretty close to zero, because you got everybody, both sides down to 75 to 90%.
That being said, a mask is better than no mask.
Mm-hmm. That is right. Data from Wednesday from this article in the Freeman regarding hospitalizations. Let's see, Vassar. This is already data that's from Thursday, so it's 5 days old. Vassar had 99 admissions with COVID. Mid-Hudson Regional, which is the old St. Francis, had 65 admissions. Kingston Hospital had 30. Northern Dutchess had 18, and Ellenville had 4. The vaccination rates for the county: Ulster County 72% fully vaccinated, and Dutchess County with 66.6% vaccinated. So there's still room to go. All right. So that's kind of it. We're going to revisit that later in the show.
Okay.
We are seeing flu, and there's a lot of kind of gimmicky names coming up with flu and COVID. Flovid, Influenza. I mean, I've heard many different combination things, and we were worried about this last year. This idea that people were going to have both at the same time, and we are seeing it a little bit this year. I don't want to maybe blow the proportions out of proportion, but it is happening. That people are kind of getting both at the same time. And the state does recommend that when people get tested for COVID, when they have symptoms, they also get tested for the flu. The rapid test that we have in our office actually is a combination test, and we'll do both at the same time. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Remember there is treatment for the flu. It's called Tamiflu. It's kind of so-so treatment, but it's treatment nonetheless. I always felt that maybe it just helps down with transmission. And it's just important to distinguish between the two entities. And remember that there still is the flu shot, and you should protect yourself against that as well. The less of all this we have flowing around, the better it is for all of us.
Everybody.
I bring up the flu shot with people, and they say some funny things.
Well, they think the flu shot gives them the flu, which is not true. But I don't know. Nowadays, it's kind of hard to convince people of things they think are true that are not true. So,
well, people get thoughts in their heads, and it's hard to disavow them. It's kind of my job in a way, is to try to disavow people of opinions that they have that are not in their best interest. So someone, for example, will say, I never had the flu before. Why do I need the shot? And we can give them analogy responses, right? Well, your house never burned down. It doesn't mean you don't need insurance, fire insurance, or your transmission never went out in your car. It doesn't mean you don't need to go for tune-ups and make sure your car's okay, or prevent something from happening. I mean, there's always analogies like that. Can you think of any others?
No, that's pretty good.
They'll say, yeah, the shot made them sick once. That's a biggie. Yeah, egg allergy is an interesting thing because newer forms of the flu shot really are okay for people with egg allergies. So that's really a thing of the past, advising people to avoid the flu shot if they have an allergy to eggs. Older formulations seem to have some components of eggs, not newer formulations. It's going to be hard to disavow someone of that. It's very hard to just tell. I think of like Pap smears, for example. We collectively, told women to get Pap smears annually for, the past 50 years or so, and all of a sudden, maybe not all of a sudden, we kind of change our mind and say, well, maybe not annually. Now, most women, for example, can get a Pap smear every 3 years. So in a way, we're kind of taking it back. And it's hard for certain women to kind of say, what do you mean? I've been a good patient, all these years getting my annual flu shot. And now, so the point, here's an example where the recommendation kind of changes, making it a little bit easier for the patient, but it's still hard for them to change their opinion, which was that you have to get annual flu shots. Does that make sense as an analogy?
Yeah.
All right. So the good news is we seem to have crested in New York, plateaued. The not so good news is that it's still here, and we're still going to see bad cases over the next 2 to 4 and even as many as 6 weeks. That's what happens with a lot of people who get very sick from COVID. It's an indolent process for many people. Kind of starts like the way I felt last week, except they kind of don't get better. They just kind of gradually get worse and worse and worse until the symptoms are severe and they need to be hospitalized.
Right. And when you're giving out the statistics for the hospitals, you have to realize that to get admitted with a COVID-related illness, you're very sick. You're not able to stay home.
Right.
You have to be in the hospital to get better. So
if you made it that far, you're pretty sick.
Yeah.
Or else you would need to be admitted. The ERs are evaluating a lot of people with COVID, and they do send a lot of people home. They thankfully don't meet criteria for admission, which is pretty much low oxygen levels and shortness of breath. Some people can still be very short of breath, and their oxygen level can be fine. That's always something I talk to people. The oxygen levels is just a number, and it's helpful, but it's not the only thing. It happens a lot with asthma, for example. I could have someone whose oxygen level's fine, but they still can't catch their breath.
The most important thing is, how do you feel?
Right. That's always. I always try to start with that with my patients. Say, tell me how you feel. That's something they taught us in med school, and they teach it to nurses as well, which is get the patient to try to tell you their story. And if you just allow the patient to do that, most people will do a pretty good job of telling you what's going on. So that's something, one of the themes of our show, which is when you talk to your healthcare provider about something that's a symptom that's concerning you, describe the symptom. And don't start with what you think you have. Hey,
Talk about how you feel.
Right. I'm coughing and I can't catch my breath or whatever.
So the takeaway is, everyone is over this. Bored.
Yes.
Tired.
Yes.
Doesn't want to talk about it anymore. Doesn't want to deal with it anymore.
Right.
But the truth is that it's still here, and please, 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 get vaccinated, get boosted, and stay vigilant with your distancing and hand washing and mask wearing, and stay safe. Stay safe out there.
Right. All right. So I wanted to we'll shift subjects a little bit, and then we'll bring you up to our first break. I wanted to talk about something called care management. And in a way, I wish I had reached out to we have an excellent care manager in our office now. His name is Tom Sabo. And maybe I'll ask him to maybe come visit us on the show one time in the near future. But the idea of care management, that's different than case management. It's only one letter different. but case management usually refers to, like in a hospital setting, there's a case manager, someone who is kind of helping with the assistance of the case to kind of transition from the hospital setting to another setting. Whether someone has to maybe
go to rehab or
right.
transition to home.
Right. Because we want that transition to be smooth and in the best interest of the patient. And that kind of, they call it the handoff now. That's the handoff. And actually that's a time where things can kind of break down. And Medicare in particular is paying a lot of attention to the handoffs. Their solutions are a little dysfunctional, but that's not surprising. But the idea that when people are going from one setting to another, has to be a smooth transition. So it could be someone from a hospital to a nursing home, hospital to rehab, hospital to home. It could be someone from going from a rehab to home, or so we have a care manager, and that's usually someone in the office outpatient setting. That's different than the case manager. And the way the case manager is on the hospital side, the care manager is on the outpatient side. And their job is to help with transitions. And these tend to be more complicated cases, people with chronic health conditions like heart failure or COPD, or bad diabetes, or maybe wounds. Wound care is a rather large topic. People have to have ongoing treatment of skin problems. Obesity can be a problem. And the other element of care management is not so much to help with transitions, but just to help with the management of chronic care altogether. I don't know if you've known this, Robin, but I can only do so much, right, in the course of a 15-minute appointment. So I frequently ask Tom to reach out to this patient, maybe next week, or make sure that they're taking the meds. That I want to make sure they were able to get the meds. Many times I prescribe meds and the patient never gets them for a combination of reasons. Sometimes it's held up in sometimes it's just turned down by the insurance company, or it was too expensive. And sometimes there's some approval process that we have not been made aware of, which is,
disheartening. It gets disheartening.
Disheartening. Anyway, all right, so the care manager will help with that. So I have an article. So why am I bringing this up? Well, it's something that people should consider, people listening, and maybe not so much for them, but for their parents or relatives that have chronic problems. To have a relationship with a care manager is I find helpful. However, the insurance companies have gotten into this business too, so they will have care managers. And the article was in the Poughkeepsie Journal yesterday, and it was an Associated Press article. I'm getting it. And it was about care management, and it comes from the Associated Press, so it's a national article. And the headline was, Health Insurers Craft Individual Approaches to Chronic Disease. Now, first of all, I'm going to be a little cynical because I don't think this article, paints the whole picture. Why do the insurance companies want to get involved with this? In a way, don't they have doctors on their plan to take care of this, doctors and their offices and other healthcare providers? Insurance companies are under pressure, particularly ones that provide Medicare, Medicaid plans to prove their results and benefits to the government. Just like pressure that I'm under as well, to kind of show not just that I do my job, but that I have to kind of show that I do it well enough. It's kind of challenging in a way because it doesn't always take into account the complexity of the patient. So it's not unusual for people to get a call from a care manager from the insurance company. And one of the things that I find a little frustrating is that it just kind of adds to different chefs in the pot. That being said, they can do some good work. So it tells the article about someone in Florida who has diabetes and got a call from her care manager from Florida Blue Cross, and how this care manager, to quote the patient that's interviewed for the article, says she cared, and I felt that made me start caring more. And I read that, and that resonates with me, because we have to make sure that we communicate to patients that we do care about how they do.
Break time.
And we're trying. Anyway, Daniel, ready to go to a break?
Yeah, break time.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll get back to this subject. All right.
Okay, stand by. And you are listening to KCR, Kingston Community Radio, AM 920 and 92.5 FM. Your announcer today is Dan Gatis, and it is 7:30 a.m., and it's Monday, January 17th. 29 degrees right now here in Uptown Kingston, and we'll be right back after these messages.
The Home Energy Assistance Program, known as HEAP, can help make winter feel a little warmer for income-eligible families. This program provides financial grants to help pay heating or utility bills. If you receive HEAP benefits, you'll qualify for Central Hudson's Bill Discount Program. Find out if you are eligible for HEAP by contacting your County Department of Social Services or by visiting the Assistance Programs section of centralhudson.com. Just don't. If you see a low-hanging or downed wire, don't touch it. Don't move it. Don't go near it. Don't drive over it. It may be a power line carrying an electric current strong enough to kill. But here's what to do. Stay at least 30 feet away and call 911. Central Hudson will take care of the problem. If you come close to a wire, shuffle away with small steps and watch your step. Wires may be hidden in fallen tree limbs or near water. Your safety matters.
Hi, my name's Maggie. I'm from Copiague, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
You're here with us at KCR, Kingston Community Radio, AM 920 and 92.5 FM. 29 degrees on this Monday, January 17th. Kingston Community Radio is talk radio, and we welcome call-ins. 845-331-9255, 845-331-9255. And this upcoming portion of Kingston Community Radio is brought to you by Central Hudson. Rain and freezing rain early will change over to snow showers this afternoon with a high of 38. From my estimation, we've already got about 6, 7, 8 inches of snow, different areas of the city. And that we have. Overcast tonight with a few flurries or snow showers possible with a low of 23. And Tuesday, some clouds in the morning giving way to mainly sunny skies for the afternoon, high of 28. And then Tuesday night, clear skies will become overcast later during the night with a low of 11 degrees, back down to that. And then Wednesday, cloudy with a few flurries or snow showers possible with a high of 39. And Wednesday night, cloudy skies with a late night snow shower, low of 27. So that's our winter weather joy for this time of year. And let's get back to the on-air studio right now with Dr. Eric Stamberg and Robin Baker. All right. Yeah, the on-air studio is off-site.
Right. We do have a guest in the studio, which is Simba the cat.
Excellent.
Yeah. I don't think he has anything relevant to say in the conversation, but he is
a therapy cat, right?
Yeah, what's that?
A therapy cat, right?
Therapy cat, yeah. That's a. Maybe we should talk about that a little bit because that comes up in the office too. But anyway, we'll be here until 9. If you have any calls or comments, the line is open. Rob and I are doing the show from home, and we did have a guest lined up, but for a combination of scheduling confusion and also weather, we have to reschedule that into February. But we will have Dr. Liz Levine on one of our shows in February.
She's a hospitalist at Northern Dutchess Hospital.
Yeah, she's the head hospitalist.
Mm-hmm.
And also does a lot of work with end-of-life issues, to really trying to get people to think about these issues and talk about these issues. And I want to give I always want to acknowledge other elements of our community that work phenomenally hard. And when I think of people like from Central Hudson, and I was telling Robin about the time I was coming back from the hospital, and it was really in the wee hours of the morning, 3 a.m. or whatever, and bad weather, a little icy, and just driving by at some road crews, looking at them up in, what do you call those things?
The buckets?
Buckets. In the middle of winter, in the middle of freezing weather, up in a bucket in the middle of the night, and I just, was amazed by how hard they work and how committed they are.
The linemen.
Linemen of the county.
They're on the line.
Yes.
Yes.
But again, they don't get much acknowledgement. Kudos. In fact, they probably hear from unhappy customers all the time.
Certainly. Not too much applause going on there. But
no. But boy, do they work hard.
They do.
And they earn every dollar they get. I think they should get a raise. I'll recommend that to Central Hudson.
So you should make a call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if you have any comments or questions, please call 331-9255. We'll be here until 9 a.m. I was talking about care management and how this is becoming kind of a new thing for healthcare.
If you're a care manager, are you a social worker?
Usually it's an RN and a nurse.
So a registered nurse.
Because there's a lot of, it's not just, it's clinical. It's like, it's management of your disease. So it has to do with your medications and your numbers and your lifestyle choices. It's really kind of a medical element that an RN is more trained in rather than a social worker. Social workers can be very involved in the hospital setting as case managers. Because that is...
You also have to be an RN to be a case manager as well.
I think hospitals kind of employ both, and a case management department probably has a combination of social work. Well, it depends on the size of the hospital. Robin's disagreeing. But if you go to a bigger hospital, there are social workers there as part of their staff.
Correct, but they're not case managers. Case managers are nurses. And registered nurses are, by the way, the highest level of nursing. So it's maybe important to recognize the level of schooling. Distinguishing between medical assistants.
Medical assistants, and then there's LPNs, which is the licensed practical nurse, and then there's RN, which is registered nurse. And a nurse, it's just different degrees. An RN is a 4-year degree. I believe an LPN is a 2-year degree. And a MA is really just a 6th, month course. But by the way, you can take over at Ulster County Community College. They have programs for this. And on all 3 categories are important members of the healthcare team. So
they work hard.
They do work hard. And many of them are not compensated enough.
True.
I'm allowed to editorialize. So the care manager. So the idea that there's someone who exists on the outpatient level to kind of help me with the complexity of a case. People can not just have one problem, but multiple problems, and then they can have multiple barriers to helping the management of this case.
Can you give an example of a patient that might require care management?
Well, they're usually patients with at least 1 to 2 chronic problems. People can have 7 or 8 chronic problems. We already listed some of the standard problems that they would potentially have. Heart failure, lung problems like COPD, which is a subset of that is emphysema, just to kind of use a phrase that people might know. Diabetes and complications of diabetes, kidney problems, degrees of renal failure, arthritic problems that just kind of also significantly impact the quality of life. The effects of obesity can also affect their quality of life. We talked about wound issues and how important they are. We have wound care. Kingston Hospital has wound care. Northern Dutchess Hospital has wound care. Not so easy to get patients to these wound care appointments. And not only that, it can also, it depends on someone's insurance plan. It can be cost prohibitive. These are kind of a lot of visits. If someone has to pay $50 per visit once a week, that's a lot of money, for people. So what's the end result? Maybe they don't obtain the wound care, which leads to further deterioration of the condition, which leads to hospitalization, infection, and, even if someone goes septic from an infection, even fatalities.
And pain and suffering.
Anyway, so the care management is to help with the complexity of cases. Another thing to note, and I've been around long enough to verify this, is patients have gotten more complicated. There's more to do. There's more morbidity. So I really have learned to embrace the idea of care management as something that helps me manage my patients. I'm a little skeptical of what, kind of insurance companies kind of doing like a shadow care management. Remember that, they're, kind of historically over the years, insurance companies kind of undervaluing primary care has kind of led to this squeezing of primary care to the point where now, we're so pressed for time that we need kind of other levels of assistance. In other words, when I read about Blue Cross and other companies now with their care management programs, I think in a way they're, coming up with a remedy for problems that they kind of helped create. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then and then they're doing it in a way that's completely parallel, almost like I call it shadow primary care, to what we're trying to do in the office.
Do you think patients are receptive to that, or they would prefer their doctor's office to?
I think it's all the above. One of the local insurance companies, I guess I won't mention them, but they're well established in our community. Has nurse practitioners kind of go into the patient's home and do what they call a wellness visit, the equivalent of wellness visit. And you and I have talked a lot about wellness visits and how important they are. But this is kind of like, it's almost identical to what I would do. So to me, it's a duplicated service. Now you could argue, well, it's just people hearing from another source what they need to be done and blah, blah, blah. And it just doesn't hurt the patient. They'll say, well, we'll send a report to your doctor. Sometimes I get the report, sometimes I don't. But the report itself is, you ever see a report that's like so computer driven, just kind of click this, dot that, that it's hard to find the meaning in the report.
A lot of dribble in there.
Yeah, and that's my impression of it. So it's just kind of like if your insurance company offers to have a nurse practitioner come to your home, it's okay if you want to accept that service, but it should not serve as a replacement for your wellness visit with your healthcare provider. So I do question that. I question the motives and the incentives, and I think they're kind of just setting up a parallel system that can lead to confusion. For example, I have to make sure or strongly encourage my patients to get screened for colon cancer. So there's 3 ways to get screened for colon cancer. You have a colonoscopy, which is completely normal, and your normal risk is good for 10 years. That's a long time. More and more, we're ordering the Cologuard, which is kind of this home-based product that's good for 3 years. Or you could have what's called an FIT, which stands for fecal immunochemical test. So it's not a FIT test because that's redundant. And that's a card, another take-home test that's good for 1 year. Well, it turns out that this company in particular is doing that to patients. They're giving them these cards to have the patient screened for colon cancer because they, again, want to turn to the government or companies that are paying for their services, saying, look at what we do, look at how we outreach to patients, but they're not really getting me that result. Matter of fact, getting that result, I have to ask the patient, do you still have a copy of the result? Great. If you do, drop it off and let me scan it into your chart. So there's a good example of something that just kind of breaks down.
Right. So, is there any follow-up?
I don't know. I can't think of an example where the test is positive. Which positive, by the way, is kind of in Seinfeld lingo, not good. Positive is not positive. Positive means that your test is abnormal, and therefore will need follow up. I can't think of a case where that's happened, but I've had plenty of patients where I start to talk to them about colon cancer screening because I think they need it, and they go, a nurse came to my house last month and gave me this card, and I did it, and I sent to them, and they told me it was normal. I'm like, well, how come I don't have that information? Why am I,
You're being left out.
Kinda. And what's the point? I find that frustrating. So if you choose to do that, make sure that your doctor or healthcare provider gets the results. But care management, it can be very helpful. And, I'm thinking of people listening. Maybe they have parents or elderly relatives who we all want people to stay home. That's where people want to be. They want to be in their home. They want to have quality of life. Something like care management can really help with that. Certain things, it's not unusual for me to get a call out of the blue. I need a prescription for a wheelchair. Yeah, I mean, as you might imagine, Robin, that's not something that's given out that easy.
Correct.
So I've been using Tom to help with procure something like that, or a hospital bed. It's not that easy. You don't just write a prescription and say, here, go get a hospital bed. You have to kind of meet criteria, and you have to apply for it through the proper channels. It has to get authorized.
You can get a wheelchair or a hospital bed if you want to pay for it, but if you would like it to be covered, there's a lot of paperwork involved.
Right. And actually, certain things like not scooters, like wheeled walkers, they also might be covered. But, sometimes they say to patients, why don't you, just go buy one. It might be easier in the long run to go. Actually, things on eBay, you could get people trying to part with wheeled walkers for $20 or whatever. So there's ways around that. Sometimes it's just not worth the effort, provided the cost of the product.
The good fight.
But certainly hospital beds are expensive and wheelchairs are expensive. Scooters or power-driven mobility devices. So this is an interesting story. Do you remember just watching TV and seeing commercials for these products?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The scooter store and the Rascal. Wasn't that one of the products?
Uh-huh.
What happened to those commercials?
I haven't seen one in a very long time.
Well, what happened, to keep it very simply, was that when Medicare decided to cover it, I wish I can give an actual time, probably about 20 to 25 years ago, they did it without many restrictions. And this led to kind of like almost a Wild West mentality of marketing and over-prescribing. And so Medicare then responded by putting restrictions in place. And the restrictions are rather onerous. And I don't know why the commercials are not there anymore. I don't know whether that was an agreement or something to where Medicare kind of just came out and said, stop running those commercials. But those commercials disappeared, didn't they? It's very hard to get one of these things prescribed. The process is very complicated. I usually don't do it anymore because I've had some cases where it's been so frustrating for all involved. You get a report. I feel like I would see the patient. I would tell the patient that we have to do it. This is kind of pre-COVID days. We have to have a visit just for this. I'm very emphatic. Just for this, because I want a nice full entry into your chart about this. If we start talking about other things, it's going to cloud the reason and the focus of why we're doing the visit.
And it'll get turned down.
And then a couple cases, patients usually the patient reaches out to the company, and then the company reaches out to me. So I've had the letter from the company with the patient in front of me, and I have answered every single question exactly as that letter says has to be answered, and then still something is found wrong. And then I would get calls from the company saying, can you amend the note to say this instead of that? And one case in particular, there were 3 or 4 times they asked me to amend the note. So finally I said, no, I'm going to stop amending this note because at some point the note has to stand on its own volition. You can't just keep modifying a note. Anyway, so it's a complicated topic, and it's frustrating for everyone. It really is. We have to have a better system. So care management, I think, could potentially help with this, something like that.
Help patients get the equipment that they need.
Right. So it's a new kind of layer of care. Care has gotten more complex. So the fact that we have to have a new stratum of provider to kind of assist with the care and hopefully improve the care, I guess that's a good thing.
Well, the criteria has increased. The paperwork has increased.
Well, that's kind of a problem, right? Yeah. But, my friend Tom in the office, sometimes I ask him to help me with the paperwork, and he does, and I appreciate that. So it is part of the job. So if anyone's having any frustration with your care, getting things approved, a couple of thoughts. First of all, understand it's not a simple request. It's really not, and even an appropriate phone call. The message is, can Dr. Stamberg prescribe a wheelchair? That's complicated. Or we need a hospital bed or whatever. So, but there's some exceptions. Usually, if there's already home care involved and with the assistance of a care manager, we can get those services approved.
It would be helpful if patients knew what their particular plan required to get those kind of things in place. For the most part, people don't really know about their own insurance.
I'm not so sure I would expect the patient to know the specifics, but I would like patients sometimes and their families sometimes understand that it's not simple. And just like we talk about with getting medications approved, that there's some challenge with this. It's not because of the doctor's office. We want, I originally ordering it. If I'm ordering a hospital bed, of course I want the patient to have it.
You think the patient needs it.
Right. So if roadblocks start showing up, it's not because of the doctor's office. And if we have a hard time navigating through that, first of all, imagine if we're having a hard time navigating through it, imagine how hard it is for the patients and their families to navigate through it. But we're just trying to do it as well. Remember, companies have different rules. Rules frequently change. Sometimes the communication could be better between, for example, if I request the nursing service to go in and help someone with care, and then the nursing service recommends like a hospital bed, sometimes that communication could be better. So that's something that can be that I think we can improve on. So care management, in case you get a call out of the blue saying this is so-and-so from your insurance plan, I am a care manager. Again, it's okay. If they're going to help you and help me improve your care, then I'll go with it. I would like communication to be a little bit better, and we'll leave it at that. Right?
So kind of how, like if you get a flu shot at the pharmacy, you want the pharmacy to communicate that with you.
Yeah.
If you have a visit from a care manager from your insurance company, you would like them to communicate that with you. I mean, don't you kind of have this issue? Like, what if a patient goes to urgent care? Right. Do you always get the report from the urgent care? I mean, is it required for the urgent care to then forward to the primary care doctor the nature of the visit, what happened, what prescription was offered? I mean,
I don't know if it's required. I mean, if an urgent care, for example, gets credentialed by an insurance company, the insurance company might put that as part of their requirements that you communicate with the primary care doctor. I will say that I've been pleased with the improvement in communication between myself, for example, and local urgent cares over the past 5 years or so. There really has been improvement in getting reports in a timely fashion, and I appreciate that. It's helped me take care of the patient, do the follow-up. Remember, the urgent care is not really set up for follow-up phone calls, for example, and it's not unusual for someone to go to an urgent care, and then maybe, I don't know, maybe they were prescribed an antibiotic, and maybe it's causing a side effect, stomach upset. Who are they going to call, the urgent care or the primary? So it can be helpful. But I have been pleased with improvement in communication. Likewise, there has been improvement with notifying me of vaccinanations like flu shots. But there have been a few examples of people don't remember what they did last week, not to mention, 2 to 3 months ago. So if I say to a patient, did you get your flu shot yet this season? They say no. I don't know. They might have had it back in October when they went to a pharmacy and if this for something else. There have been a few cases of people getting, not with me personally, but anecdotally of people getting vaccinations a second time because they didn't remember, and the data system didn't really acknowledge that. But improvement definitely has been improvement. All right. So, but I think it's a good habit. If you are somewhere else, if you are in urgent care, if you see a specialist, to remind the office to communicate with your primary care provider. Sometimes people, by the way, don't remember us. And that's sad in a way, but that to me just underscores, one of the ways that healthcare's changed. There's a lot of turnover in offices, a lot of providers kind of coming and going. So the fact that people don't have a strong attachment to their primary care provider, and therefore sometimes can't even remember the name when they go to an emergency room or whatever. And that's sad, but I hope for some improvement with that. You agree with that, Robin? Well said. Robin? Anyways. Dan, are you still listening?
We are here. We are definitely here. And how are you doing?
Good. So you think this is all helpful for people to hear?
Extraordinarily. Yeah. We have to be able to manage what we're passing through when we need it. So.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's a tough system to navigate, and if people need a little extra help, I guess the help is there. All right, so we are inching up on our second break, and we'll be here till 9 a.m. We have some other medical topics to go over in the bottom half of the show. Is that the way you talk in the business, Dan?
I'm sorry?
The second hour is referred to as the bottom half of the show?
We can say that. Yes, absolutely. The second hour is, from the top of the hour to the bottom of the hour, back to the top of the hour. In radio lingo. Right now we're getting to the top of the hour.
That's interesting. You don't have any closures to go over because it's also happens to be Martin Luther King Day.
It is Martin Luther King Day, so there are no closures to go over. However, I would expect that there would have been quite a number of them if it wasn't Martin Luther King Day today. You're absolutely correct, and that is a very, very important announcement to everybody that cancellations aren't required because schools are closed for today. Martin Luther King Day. Luckily, because it would have been either closures or major delays and things like that for our schools today.
Yeah, even my office is closed on Martin Luther King Day.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting. New Vance, my employer, considers that a very important holiday, and it honors it by closing offices.
Exactly, and that's good for everybody to be able to celebrate and understand what the day really
means.
Signifies. It's a very, very significant American tradition of being able to voice a new idea. A new idea against old paradigms.
Yep. Anyway, Okay, so we'll be back after the break. Do we have
Absolutely.
birthdays, Dan?
Yeah, I've got a few. So just after the break, I'll break into the birthdays, and we'll have a ball. We have 4 birthdays and 1 winner.
No way. 4 birthdays?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Birthday Palooza.
Yeah, right. Okay, I'll take it away for you. Okay, Eric?
All right.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Eric Stamberg and Robin Baker, thank you for bringing us around to the 8 o'clock hour, and many thanks to you also for listening. It is Monday, January 17th, and this last portion of Kingston Community Radio has been brought to you by Central Hudson. And it's 29 degrees right now here on this Monday, January 17th, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Don't. Just don't. If you see a low-hanging or downed wire, don't touch it. Don't move it. Don't go near it. Don't drive over it. It may be a power line carrying an electric current strong enough to kill. But here's what to do. Stay at least 30 feet away and call 911. Central Hudson will take care of the problem. If you come close to a wire, shuffle away with small steps and watch your step. Wires may be hidden in fallen tree limbs or near water. Your safety matters.
The Home Energy Assistance Program, known as HEAP, can help make winter feel a little warmer for income-eligible families. This program provides financial grants to help pay heating or utility bills. If you receive HEAP benefits, you'll qualify for Central Hudson's Bill Discount Program. Find out if you are eligible for HEAP by contacting your County Department of Social Services or by visiting the Assistance Programs section of centralhudson.com.
Hi, this is Cameron Rylance from Kingston, and I support Kingston Community Radio because it's informative.
And we're back. Thank you for listening to KCR, Kingston Community Radio, AM 920 and 92.5 FM. And my name is Dan Gatis, and it is 8:01 a.m., 29 degrees on this Monday, January 17th. Rain and freezing rain early today will change over to snow showers this afternoon with a high of 38. Chance of precipitation is 100%. A high of 38 degrees. Tonight, a low of 23 degrees with overcast skies and a few flurries or snow showers possible. Tuesday, some clouds in the morning, giving way to mainly sunny skies in the afternoon, and it's a high of 28. A low of 11 on Tuesday night with clear skies early, becoming overcast later during the night. And Wednesday, cloudy, a few flurries or snow showers possible, about a 20% chance of that, with a high of 39 on Wednesday. And Wednesday night, cloudy skies with a late night snow shower, low of 27. Chance of snow is 50% for where you are. And this upcoming portion of Kingston Community Radio is brought to you by Herzog's. Stop by Herzog's Home and Paint Center in the Kingston Plaza for all of your home building, maintenance, and painting needs, and discover the difference of buying local. Sales are ongoing at herzogs.com. Check out their website, herzogs.com. You're listening to WGHQ, AM 920 and 92.5 FM, the home of Kingston Community Radio. And let's get back to our on-air guests. Not guests, I mean hosts, as we know them well. Eric Stamberg and Robin Baker. Welcome back.
Thank you. And why don't we just proceed with our birthday?
Let's do that. Thank you for reminding me. I've got them right out here in front of me. We want to wish a happy birthday to Maria Berardi from Mom and Dad. We want to wish a happy birthday to Beverly Berardi from your favorite brother-in-law. And we want to wish a happy birthday to Michaela Labert from your godfather. And a happy birthday to Scott Johnson from your hermano. And those are our birthday entries for today. And the birthday winner of the famous Boyce Dairy Milkhouse cow pie from 62 O'Neill Street in Kingston, New York is, drumroll, Maria I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing it. Maria Berardi, courtesy of Boyce Dairy Milk House and Kingston Community Radio. So we have a moo and a bell for you. Moo. And you had a yes. Okay. Okay. It is written. Maria Berardi is our winner for tonight, for today, and for all day today.
All right. Well, happy birthday, and thanks for that. Four all birthdays today. That's pretty up there for a record.
Yeah, that came in from one family.
Wow.
Very interesting. Yeah, one basic. It came in from Bill, and we thank you for bringing in all those birthdays for the day.
So we are going to segue to kind of the more academic portion of this morning's show. I always try to talk about kind of a specific medical topic, just to explain to people things that they might hear, that doctors or other healthcare providers might talk to them. And I thought we would talk about platelets. So to keep it very simple, you have blood cells, and there's three main types of blood cells: white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets. And the blood cells are made by your bone marrow, and I think sometimes other parts of your body too are used, like your spleen. But I always think that's an amazing example of biology or God or whoever you choose to believe in, or both. Kind of like this empty space. We have the space in the bones, the bone marrow. That we might as well do something with this space, and over time, that's where we make our blood cells. That's just amazing. But there's three main types of blood cells: white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets. And to keep it very simple, white blood cells have a role with infection and fighting infection. So, for example, if someone's sick and I decide to check their white blood cell level, it may come back elevated, which suggests certain things. Sometimes it comes back lower than normal, which also suggests certain things. So that would be an example of white blood cells and the role they play. Red blood cells, that's helps us transport oxygen. So the red blood cell is also called hemoglobin. If you have low red blood cells, you are anemic. If you have too many red blood cells, you are called polycythemic, which is not used as so often. But then you have this third category, platelets, and platelets have a role in clotting. The reason our blood clots is I always say complicated, because in addition to platelets, you also have these things called clotting factors. For example, medications that are commonly prescribed, like Coumadin, affect clotting factors and therefore interfere with clotting and thin someone's blood, to use the term loosely. But platelets also do that. And abnormalities of platelets can come up in various settings. But they also play a role therapeutically as well. There are certain medications that affect platelets and inhibit platelets. There's one medication in particular that interferes with the function of platelets and is used rather commonly in the context of someone who's had a history of heart disease or stroke. You know what that medication might be? Very common. The answer is aspirin. Aspirin, also called acetylsalicylic acid, has different effects. It does bring down fever. It does decrease your pain and your inflammation, but it also specifically inhibits platelets. So it's used therapeutically on the current standards in someone who has had a history of heart disease or stroke. We have backed off recommending aspirin for other populations. For a long time, we told people to take a daily baby aspirin. Current guidelines, current standards suggest that the risk of the daily aspirin in someone who does not have a history of heart disease or stroke outweighs any potential benefit, and in most cases should not be given at this time. So, for example, if someone has actually just maybe high blood pressure and they're 60 years old, another era we would have said take a daily baby aspirin. It's now felt that the potential risk of that aspirin outweighs the benefit.
What are the alternatives, Dr. Stamberg?
Yeah, I'll give you. There's alternatives, and just to explain the risk of the aspirin, in addition to just kind of causing bleeding. But remember, that's why we kind of recommended it for people with heart disease or stroke. It inhibits the platelets and therefore interferes with clotting enough to prevent future heart attacks or future strokes. Okay, but aspirin can erode the stomach and even cause ulcers. So it's felt that the risk of ulcers outweighs the benefit. If someone still needs a product like aspirin but can't tolerate it for stomach reasons, there's another commonly prescribed product called, the generic is hard to say. The brand is called Plavix, and the generic is called Pitodrel. It's another platelet inhibitor that does not affect the function of the stomach. So it's the medication of choice for people who need something like a daily aspirin but cannot tolerate it. But that's an example where we therapeutically want to inhibit the function of platelets enough to prevent something from happening, specifically a heart attack or a stroke. But that's important for people to remember. I've had a few patients who maybe they're 75. They want to stay on the aspirin. Again, it's hard to kind of do it about face and something that we've been telling patients for a couple of decades now. You remember that daily baby aspirin we told you to take? Well, we've changed our mind. Now don't take it. I have a few patients who choose to stay on it, and I say, well, as long as you understand the current guideline, my job is to advise you one way or the other. But if that's your prerogative to stay on it. But what a lot of times, we do blood work. People come in for a physical. We do some routine blood work. It usually includes a CBC, which stands for complete blood count. Now, whether or not this is evidence-based, whether or not we should be doing this on an evidence-based level, I'll leave for the big shots to figure out. On a simple level, I find it helpful. You can pick up a lot of things with just routine blood work. For example, it's not unusual for me to find that someone's anemic, and anemia, specifically iron deficiency anemia, can be an initial sign of something like colon cancer, for example. And I've had plenty of patients in my career. That's how we indeed diagnosed their colon cancer. For whatever reason, they never got screened, and we run the blood work, and sure enough, there it is. Anyway, so we'll also look at platelets. So it's not unusual for someone to have a CBC done, even though they feel completely well, and it comes back showing an abnormality of platelets. Maybe the platelets are a little too high, maybe they're a little too low.
What's the kind of ideal ratio between white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets? What would be the kind of an ideal or a very healthy ratio between the three?
Yeah, there's normal ranges, and there's always a little variation from lab to lab. And if someone has a number that's just a little bit outside of the normal ranges, and usually does not mean that there's anything significant. It's also a byproduct of modern healthcare, where people kind of have access to their labs, which overall is a good thing. But things could sometimes be flagged, and they show up very dramatically as red, and it can be alarming to people. And sometimes they get these, results before I get a chance to look at them, which is very frustrating. So anyway, a normal white count probably is anywhere from 5 to maybe 11. So if someone's sick with a fever and I do a CBC and it comes back at 15 or 16, that's significant. And normal hemoglobin, again, there's always a little variation. Probably should be around from maybe 11 to 14.
The hemoglobin is red blood cells, am I correct?
Right, yeah, I'm sorry, red blood cells, right. And platelet count, normal is probably anywhere from around 140 to, quite a range, from 140 to maybe 400. And those are 100,000s. Platelets are very small, by the way. They're amazing if you ever just kind of looked at like a a slide of blood. You could, and if you had someone kind of walk you through it, they could say, this is the white blood cell, this is the red blood cell, and these are the platelets. So the white blood cells look very dramatic, kind of like, Dan, you're old enough to remember Fantastic Voyage, right? Remember that movie?
Sure.
What a great movie that is. It really is a funny movie. But the white blood cells kind of look like white blood cells, these big kind of creatures. They're big by cell standards. And red blood cells look like little red discs. And then the platelets are just this kind of little schmutzy things, these little specks on the white blood on the slide.
Specks, but
so that's the platelets look like.
Essentially, in our circulatory system, we're actually pushing more platelets than anything else. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's right. So I guess you asked a question about ratio. I think you probably have one white blood cell for probably about maybe 50 red blood cells, and maybe 100 to 200 platelets.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's very fascinating. Yeah.
And if I had a trained pathologist, would probably correct me on those ratios. But the idea is the white blood cells are less common, the red blood cells than the platelet. But they really look like these little specks, and they're amazing things. But so what would that mean? So if I did a CBC in someone and their platelets came back elevated, first of all, it can mean nothing. If I said the range is up to 400 and it comes back at 410, that's probably nothing. Sometimes people with inflammation in their body will have a high platelet count. Platelets are also a inflammatory mediator. That's the phrase we use. One of the many things that the body does to respond to inflammation. So it does prick up my ears a little bit. There might be something up. For example, people with conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, where they have a lot of inflammation going on in their bodies at all times, they might have high platelets. Sometimes platelets are low. And there's the term for a low platelet is thrombocytopenia. That's kind of what it means.
Okay, everybody say that once. Thrombocytopenia.
and so thrombocytopenia, thrombocytes are platelets, and penia is a suffix that means a lower amount. So yes. Whereas the opposite would be cytosis, thrombocytosis, or sometimes themia, not penia is used. Thrombocythemia would mean too many platelets. So, but anyway, that's getting into kind of the Latin. They used to make doctors of tomorrow take Latin. That was part of the reason that somehow that would we had to understand things like that in order to be a doctor. Anyway, all right. So, what are some common conditions that would be low platelets? And so this is when you maybe you're ordering the blood work to help you work up symptoms. If somebody, say it's June and someone comes in to see me and they're just not feeling well, they're achy, they're tired, they feel like they have some fevers, and I say, wow, the person, is not feeling well, and I can't quite figure out what's wrong. I'm going to do some blood work. So I do a CBC, which stands for complete blood count, and it comes back and the platelets are low. They're maybe 40 or 50. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that's seen commonly in tick-related infections. It's seen commonly with Lyme disease, but it's also seen commonly with these other entities that we talk about in the show sometimes called anaplasmosis or ehrlichiosis. So that would be a finding that's actually rather common, usually in the time of year where we see more tick-related infections. The ticks used to have a season. I'm not so sure they're sticking to their season anymore. I think they're as confused with climate patterns as we are.
It seems like Lyme. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like Lyme was Lyme and tick related hits this year were pretty low.
It's interesting. We still see it. I see it, and it's common enough for me to always kind of consider it in the workup of symptoms. And when I work with residents and students, I always say if someone is around here, has symptoms of an acute illness that you can't really obviously explain in another way, you really should entertain the possibility of a tick-related infection. For example, if someone comes in and they're having fever and chills and they're achy, but they're having a runny nose, that's a respiratory infection. Could be COVID, but that's not tick-related. If someone comes in with all of those symptoms, but they don't have respiratory, a runny nose, then you don't really know where that is, and you should entertain the possibility of tick-related infection.
Right,
achy
joints and achiness and malaise, that kind of a thing.
That's right. And do some blood work, and depending on the symptoms, I will sometimes start treating rather than wait for results. It all depends. Every case is a little bit different. Some cases, I'm fairly confident in the diagnosis, and the blood work is done to just confirm it. But I don't want the person to wait 2 or 3 days for treatment. Whenever I treat tick-related infections, I always give a little speech, and I say the great majority of Lyme disease is easily diagnosed and easily treated, because it's true. It's a true statement. That most
and that's a lucky
get Lyme,
thing. That's a very lucky thing, isn't it, Doctor?
Yeah, it's kind of an easy to treat infection in most cases. I'm never going to say all cases, but in most cases. So I just want people to understand that if they're ever diagnosed with Lyme, it's actually when you start prescribing something like doxycycline, the therapeutic benefit is dramatic. People start feeling better within 48 hours.
Yeah, one of the best therapies that there is. Again, I'm repeating many discussions that you had about Lyme. What are the actual residual effects of once you've had Lyme? What are the actual residual effects of any symptoms and things like that that happen just from that one event?
That's a good question. I think so. I think a better way to think about that is like, what are the long-term symptoms of Lyme? And,
right.
Is there something called chronic Lyme? In other words, are there people who, despite treatment, have some degree of Lyme disease living within their body at all times? So you might have late symptoms of Lyme disease, and that's also common. Remember, we live in a very Lyme endemic area, and people get a lot of tick bites. So, by the way, a little editorial. People get hung up on, I don't remember a tick bite, and sometimes the doctor or the healthcare provider will say, well, did you get bit by a tick? In my opinion, that's a pretty useless question, because the tick bite that made someone sick is probably a bite that never got noticed, because the tick was attached long enough to transmit the bacteria. The tick could be behind your knee, between your toes, in your hairline, other various parts of your body. So I don't even really ask that question. Did you get bit by a tick?
Exactly, because you can't. It went unnoticed. When I got Lyme, it was right there in that significant little area of behind my knee, and I had a great ring.
Absolutely, that's the most common location for people to get the rash of Lyme disease. So late effects of Lyme disease, it can cause, and we see it this time of year, someone can get a Lyme arthritis, which is usually almost always in the knee. The knee gets very swollen and painful. And not that I want someone to have Lyme arthritis, but when that diagnosis gets made, it's very responsive to doxycycline. It's almost good news in a way. I know it's a weird spin on things, but I'd rather have someone have Lyme arthritis than degenerative arthritis and ultimately need a knee replacement.
Mm-hmm. The Spiro, what do we call it? The Spiro.
The spirochete.
Spirochete is bacterially based.
Yeah, the spirochete is a family of bacteria. The other major spirochetal disease is syphilis, which is one of the things that engineers people who believe in chronic Lyme, because syphilis itself can kind of live within someone for a long time. But syphilis, once it's diagnosed and identified, is treated with penicillin, and it's one of the few times that we still use straight penicillin. It is true that if syphilis goes too long, it starts to cause cognitive effects, like the madness of King George, or Christopher Columbus,
or possibly, our Nazi guy.
I believe Al Capone are three major historical figures that were felt to have had dementia from syphilis. It can't be irreversible if it gets to that point, regardless of whether that's treated or not. Anyway, so Lyme can cause a knee problem. It can cause Bell's palsy. Bell's palsy is kind of a paralysis of the muscles of your face. And it's very disturbing, very uncomfortable. It can be very dramatic. And again, to put a weird spin on things, it's almost good news when it's caused by Lyme disease, because it's more Bell's palsy caused by Lyme disease is more responsive to treatment than Bell's palsy that just occurs by itself. We use the term idiopathic if Lyme disease. Bell's palsy is caused by itself, because it just kind of happens sometimes. That's called idiopathic. And Bell's palsy caused by Lyme disease is also responsive to doxycycline. Another interesting side note: for decades, we told people to not, in the pediatric world, to not give doxycycline to children younger than 8, because it would affect their teeth, stain their teeth. It turns out that is a very, very rare side effect, and that precaution has been removed. So the idea of giving doxycycline to pediatric populations is present.
Very good, because, kids go places where no man has been before.
What do kids do? They roll around on the ground.
Absolutely. I like to do that too.
They go outside. They play in their yards. They just do what kids do. So tick-related infections are very much seen in the pediatric world as well. So anyway, so we weren't talking about platelets, though, weren't we?
Yes.
Right, so the idea I wanted to bring it up was that tick-related infections can go over the platelets. A lot of viruses can go over the platelets. Other inflammatory conditions can increase the platelets. Sometimes the person feels completely fine, and I do a platelet count, and it comes back really low. Maybe it comes back at 30 or 40. In the pediatric world, again, it's a condition people haven't heard of too often, but it's not the rarest of the rare. A kid starts to get kind of like these little red dots all over their body, but otherwise feels pretty fine, pretty well. Maybe they had a cold 2 weeks ago. And then you do some blood work, and the platelet count can come back phenomenally low, 5 or 6. You don't really see the risk of bleeding due to low platelets until that count gets below 30. So even though normal range is about 130 or greater, and I could do a CBC and it'll come back at 60, even though that's abnormal and needs to be explained and maybe worked up, the person does not necessarily have an immediate risk of having bleeding. But if you're getting below 30, they do have that risk. So in the pediatric world, they get these little dots, we're called red dots. They're called petechiae, and they're caused by low platelets. And you'll do a CBC, and the count will come back pretty close to 0. That's called idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura. Idiopathic means we don't really know what causes it, although it's frequently linked to a recent viral infection. Thrombocytopenia simply means the platelets are low, and purpura kind of refers to, the color of the rash. It's a little purplish. I said red, but it can be a little purple. And that can be a serious condition. And that can be, a kid usually needs to be hospitalized because that platelet count is dangerously low. The patient's at increased risk of bleeding. Certain things are done to bring the platelet counts up. It is a treatable condition. They might have to have steroids. Steroids will be very complicated. Steroids now, they affect us, but they can bring up the platelet count.
Oh, that's interesting.
What's that?
That's very interesting that steroids will elevate the platelet count. platelet count?
There's some other things called IVIG, which is immunoglobulin. It's literally just intravenous antibodies that also play a role. And there are resistant cases that sometimes require a splenectomy. It's complicated, but the spleen does many things, one of which is eats up platelets, helps us kind of keep our platelets in check. So if someone has this condition where the platelets are getting consumed, to remove the spleen might help the platelet count come up. And really, really resistant cases might need a bone marrow transplant. But that's really getting above and beyond what we deal with, what a family practitioner in Kingston, New York deals with.
Wow, that's fascinating. That is fascinating. Dr. Stamberg, we're going to take our last break of the day, and we'll be back in about 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Eric Stamberg and Robin Baker, for being with us today for Medical Monday, a very fascinating Medical Monday. It's now at the bottom of the hour, and you're with us on Kingston Community Radio, KCR, AM 920 and 92.5 FM, and streaming online at mykcr.org. 29 degrees on this Monday, January 17th, and this last portion of Kingston Community Radio has been brought to you by Herzog's. Because the colors and quality of paint you choose matters, Herzog's Paint and Design Center, located in the Kingston Plaza, is there for you, offering the largest selection of Benjamin Moore paints and the area's most complete line of painting supplies. Herzog's Paint and Design Center also provides color samples from Benjamin Moore paints, including the eco-friendly Aura line. Color decorating consultants and expert interior designers are always there, ready for you and ready to assist you in choosing the right colors and more for your home. Visit Herzog's in the Kingston Plaza. We'll be right back after these messages.
Okay, men, this is your time. Maybe you didn't choose this, but you're here now. You're gonna go out there and be an all-star caregiver. Cook, clean, be there emotionally and physically. You gotta dig deeper. Drive them to physical therapy, doctor's appointments, because that's what caregivers do. Don't give up. Show the world that you're tougher than tough. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute? When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can. But it's just as important to take time for yourself. AARP can help. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Eleanor Arrow from the town of Ulster, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
Okay, you know what we got this morning? Quite a heaping helping of snow. Raining, freezing rain early will change over to snow showers this afternoon with a high of 38. It's a 100% chance of more precipitation today. And then tonight, overcast with a few flurries or snow showers possible with a low of 23. Tuesday, a high of 28 with some clouds in the morning, giving way to mainly sunny skies in the afternoon. And Tuesday night, clear skies early, becoming overcast later during the night, with a low of 11 degrees on Tuesday night. Wednesday, cloudy, a few flurries or snow showers possible, about a 20% chance of that, with a high of 39. And Wednesday night, cloudy skies with late night snow showers, a low of 27. That's a 50% chance of snow showers where you are. And you are with us here at KCR, Kingston Community Radio, AM 920 and 92.5 FM, and streaming online at mykcr.org. And you can call in. 331-9255 is your number to call in. 331-9255. And, of course, that's 845-331-9255. And this upcoming portion of Kingston Community Radio is brought to you by Ulster Savings Bank, many locations throughout the Mid-Hudson Valley and one near you. Let's get back to Dr. Eric Stamberg and Robin Baker over at Dr. Eric Stamberg and Robin Baker's facility.
Yes, we don't live in a home. We have a facility.
Exactly. I didn't know what to say. You're not here. I'm not looking at you. So it's a good way to do it if we have to. We can do it.
Right.
We've got the technology.
That's right. And hopefully this will be the last time. It's just a combination of reasons that we're doing it this way. And looking out at the freshly fallen silent shroud of snow.
Exactly. Freshly fallen silent shroud of snow is, when I was coming in this morning, Dr. Stamberg, the parking lot plow dude, wonderful service-oriented person that was doing the plowing for the parking lot here, was just starting. He was just starting in. So it's a good thing that you didn't get, you didn't try.
Yeah, I appreciate being able to do the show like this morning. I was perusing the Daily Freeman website, and there was an announcement about another testing site opening on Thursday, January 20th. So it says a second state-run COVID-19 testing site will open Thursday, January 20th at SUNY Ulster and Stone Ridge, according to Pat Ryan. Let's see. Ryan announced the details at Ulster County Community College. They'll be open from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Let's see. So, and there's also the New Paltz, the testing site at SUNY New Paltz, open for the same hours as well. And there is a website to register. Rob and I were talking during the break that some friends of ours have had challenging times to do this, which is unfortunate. That things like this wind up being so complicated. I'm looking at the website myself. There's a lot of time slots. My son Sam, for example, needs to go back to school next week, and they're requiring a PCR test. So remember the difference between a rapid test and a PCR test. A PCR test, I call the send out. So you don't get it back right away. It takes about 1 to 2 days. It is the better test. With my recent bout of COVID, my rapid test was negative, and whereas the send out came back positive. So just keep that in mind. So I'm looking at the website and seeing that, I feel for everyone when they say that they have a hard time using these sources here. So just remember that, you can go on this website. It is, if you just go to the Daily Freeman site, there's a link to it on their website. And the Daily Freeman has made articles related to COVID free for people. Otherwise, you need a subscription to use the Daily Freeman website. So here's the current data as of yesterday. Okay, active cases in Ulster County, 6,985 active cases, up 363 from the previous day. That's Friday. That's an all-time high. We have more right now than Dutchess County. Remember, Dutchess County has about 40% more people than we do. They have about 4,338 cases, which is down from the day before, which is interesting. We talked about cresting and a plateau of the Omicron variant. Hopefully this is more evidence of it. You can't just go by one day. You have to really look at like a 7-day trend. Current hospitalized rates. Okay, we went over this. Not much different than what I said earlier. Ellenville Hospital 3, Kingston Hospital 33. I should call that Health Alliance Hospital in Kingston. Northern Dutchess Hospital 20. Astor Brothers Hospital 101. Mid-Hudson Regional in Poughkeepsie 55. Vaccination rates about the same. It's 72% in Ulster County and almost 67% in Dutchess County. So, again, hopefully we have plateaued. And when I look at that case report in Dutchess County coming down. It reassures me that maybe that there's truth to that we have plateaued. I worry about the rest of the country because just like COVID first hit us in New York, it's one of the reasons why to this day the fatality rate in New York State is still high compared to other states. It's because of how many fatalities were sustained early before there was any treatment. All right, excuse me one second. I just got another call. I had to press the call. For my mother, Mom. Robin, we'll have to call her when we're done with the show. What was I saying? So New York and New Jersey got hit hard and early with COVID. So yeah, when you look at fatalities per state, you always want to look at kind of how it's spaced out over the past 2 years. All right, so Robin and I began the show talking about staying vigilant, not letting our guard up. If you have not been vaccinated, get vaccinated. If you've not been boosted, get boosted. Very important. That booster is very important. And you know what? Maybe we will have to get boosters every 6 months for a while. So be it. I had my booster, by the way, I think it was the end of December. I didn't have any side effects from it. I felt fine. It's a smaller dose, so it's less likely to give you side effects. Still might happen, but you know what? It's what it is. It has to be done. So if you've not been boosted, make sure you get boosted. Continue with the mask wearing, and really the N95 is the way to go. That if you're in a room with two people and both those individuals are wearing N95 masks, the risk of transmission is very low. All right. Rob, you have any other words for wise?
Just stay vigilant, definitely.
Right. Treatment is still kind of the same. This new texter just told we're doing the radio show, and treatment is kind of the same. That pill called Paxlovid was approved within the past couple of weeks. It really cuts down on serious cases and symptoms. The criteria is complicated. I haven't prescribed it yet. And it's not that easy. The supply is not that readily available. And it's just going to be, I think, a little bit of a lag before that becomes kind of a stable part of our armament, our weapons against COVID. And the antibody treatment, there's another type of antibody treatment that is effective against Omicron if you meet criteria as well. Generally, so what are the criteria? Generally, you just increase risk if you're above age 65, or if you have another condition that puts you at increased risk of infection, like a lung condition or heart condition or diabetes, you may be a candidate for one of these two treatments. The pill, which is called Paxlovid, and the antibody treatment. The name escapes me. It's an unusual name. It's not Regeneron. So keep that in mind. If you diagnose yourself with COVID, do a home test, or if you're diagnosed in an urgent care, I do think you should try to get some form of follow-up with your primary care provider. I understand. We everything is clogged right now. Things weren't great before COVID with accessibility and availability. We live in a system that is under strain, and it's worse now because of COVID. And other reasons, of course, with healthcare in general. So try to be patient with your doctor's office, your healthcare provider. Try not to take it out on the individuals who are answering the phone, or nurses, or even the doctor. When patients want to give me feedback about their office experience, it's okay.
Yeah.
But just don't take it out on the person answering the phone. Anybody who's ever worked in an office, that phone is ringing off the hook. A primary care office, and I'm sure right now, the fact that the office is closed today is got to be frustrating to people. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, there's the service, so there's a doctor on call.
Right. Although the doctor, we're always reticent to treat something over the phone. We really are. For just a combination of reasons. One is it really is not, it's not an official encounter. And if it's not an official encounter, there's plenty of cases on the books of doctors that have done things over the phone. Oh, you're sick. Okay. Here, I'll call in something for you. And then it winds up being something else. And that doctor has been held accountable for never properly evaluating the patient. So that's part of where it comes from. Being held to this very high standard. COVID has moved the bar a little bit, allowing for telemedicine, kind of, validating the provision of services outside of a traditional visit. There's limitations of this. There's benefits of this. Whether or not it's here to stay, well, time will tell. Already there's maybe, beginnings of providers, health insurance companies kind of pulling back on telemed and covering it.
Right, they're not paying for it.
That's right. Recently, it was clarified, and this has been a source of stress for patients, that you're not allowed to provide a telemedicine services if the person's out of state. This time of year, a lot of my patients kind of go to Florida, and then, I don't know why, and I don't know how it applies to like New York City, for example, where there's plenty of people in New York City whose patients live in Bergen County, New Jersey, or whatever. Those people have to kind of drive to across the GW Bridge and park somewhere in order to have a proper telemedicine service. But as of now, under what's approved, you have to be within the state in order to provide the service. That might be a licensing thing. So someone, for example, in New York City might also be licensed in New Jersey, maybe. I don't know. I'm only licensed in New York. Anyway, so that's been a source of frustration for patients of mine who are in Florida. And look, it's tough. You're down in a different state. You're sick with something. The urgent cares are full. It's complicated. So I understand and I share your frustration, but that we don't make the rules. Agree with that?
Yeah.
All right. So I just want to implore people to. I know that people are frustrated, but to not take it out on the people right in front of them. That's not fair. And like them in general, we've talked about that when you go to, any store or whatever. If you're upset over having to wear a mask, which, by the way, I have not seen. Have you seen that any yourself?
I've not seen the videos of these encounters, but
right.
I've never seen an actual encounter. But people are getting. You go to CVS, you want to pick up a prescription, and there's like 15 people in front of you.
Yep.
With the 6-foot distancing, you're spread out across the store. Yeah, it gets a little bit. But people seem to be, they're waiting their turn. It seems to be okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of that firsthand, any of that kind of frustration or poor behavior.
So let's round out the show. I know we have 15 minutes left for our show. And I thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about what we were going to be discussing with Dr. Levine, the end-of-life care. This is a hard subject to talk about, broach, especially in a 15-minute visit. Getting your MOLST form filled out, that stands for Medical
Orders
for Life-Sustaining Treatment.
Right.
And so it's a funny acronym.
It is a funny acronym.
But it's that bright pink form.
It is, but it's funny because this paper form is meant to draw your attention, in a chart, but it contradicts a little bit with everybody having charts in the computer.
There's no colors there.
No colors in that pink form. But
makes it a little easier to find at home.
Right. And the MOLST form is a little bit different than just kind of having the discussion with an individual. The discussion that I have with like a 66-year-old is different than what I'm going to have with an 86-year-old.
And is it required? I mean, people really have some confusion about this. I mean, is this something that you have to do, that you're required to do?
Nursing,
or is it just good to do?
It's definitely good to do. You are not required to do. You know, when this first came out, we're going back about, to reminisce about the days of 2010. There was talk that these were death panels, so the government kind of, initially it was part of the wellness visit and it was required, then it became optional. So it's an optional part of a wellness visit. It's covered by Medicare, but it's a time-related code. So in order for me to properly bill Medicare for discussion of this, I have to talk to the patient for at least 15 minutes about this. So for a couple of problems with that. One is, frequently my appointments are either 15 minutes or sometimes 30 minutes. So that have another 15 minutes and there's enough to do in that time frame. So enough that all of a sudden come up with another 15 minutes to have this proper discussion. The other problem with that is it doesn't always take 15 minutes. Again, my discussion with a 66-year-old is different than my discussion with an 86-year-old. So these are things that Medicare has to look at.
Right, and it's a 3-page document. It requires 2 signatures, and there's a lot going on in this paperwork, isn't there?
Yes. There's page 1 and page 2, and page 1 is kind of the easy thing. It basically asks if you want CPR done or not. Are you going to be attempted to be resuscitated, or are you going to be not resuscitated, otherwise known as DNR, do not resuscitate. And resuscitation means 3 things. And this is making it as simple as possible. It means chest compressions, it means a tube down the throat, and it means electricity, kind of like what you see in television. That's what resuscitation means, those 3 things.
Clear.
And if you do not want those 3 things, you should consider being a do not resuscitate. I always give the scenario of, say an elderly couple, a wife goes to check on the husband and he's down on the ground unconscious. Normally you call the ambulance. Ambulance arrives, it does what they need to do and kind of hooks up a monitor and finds that there's, a flat line. Person's passed away. At that point, you just kind of say, it's happened, it's done with, or do you try to resuscitate? And that's what the resuscitation means. It means chest compressions, it means a tube down the throat, and it means electricity potentially to try to restart things. The success rate in that scenario is very, very low. Yes, there's always some story of somebody who, doctors said was not going to make it or whatever. So that's scenario 1 that people have to think about. Do they want that? Do they want to go through with that or not? And if the answer is no, then they should be a do not resuscitate. Page 2 of the form is a little confusing. I call it the what now. It's kind of really like, say that has happened, and the person's now in the hospital and something bad has happened. Maybe they had a bad heart attack or a stroke or another similar condition. What now? Would they want to be on a ventilator for a long time? Would they want to have an alternative type of feeding? At some point, if people are on ventilators, you got to give them nutrition, but they can't eat because they got a tube down their throat. So you got to give them an alternative type of nutrition. You can give them nutrition through their nose. You can give them nutrition through their IV. You can put a tube in their stomach and give them long-term feeding like that. That's very common in the nursing home setting, people with long-term feeding like that. So that's kind of page 2 of the most form. So we'll be talking about those issues in February. We also have visits lined up with a urologist to talk about completely different things, and another new doctor to the community, and also a wound care specialist. See, they're pounding on the door to be on a guest in this show, Robin.
So
I have to talk to my producer.
When we were trained on the most form in the office, part of the training was, like, what if you got stung by a bee and you were rendered unconscious
Yes.
and you couldn't answer any medical questions for yourself?
Right.
What are your decisions? What would you
Right,
want people
okay.
to know about you?
That's not much different than the scenario I gave, which is you're unconscious on the floor.
Correct, but you're talking about a person that's not at the end of their life.
Yeah.
A person that's just in a situation where they can't speak for themselves medically, and
Right.
what would they want?
Right.
And who would they want to speak for them if they couldn't speak for themselves?
So you're talking more about a proxy. A proxy is kind of a different, so it's usually, most form doesn't really, not the same thing as a healthcare proxy. And that's kind of a different thing. But people should have a healthcare proxy. Someone to make decisions for you if you cannot make them for yourself. It's really that simple. And it's nice to have it in writing. New York State does allow for kind of what I call a pecking order. It's usually the spouse. After the spouse, it could be children, sometimes siblings, other relatives, even just a good friend. You guys should go down the list of the pecking order. But yes, it's always good to have that in writing. Something where happened to me and I can't make decisions for myself, I hereby appoint, fill in the blank. I have healthcare proxy forms that are provided by the state. You can complete by yourself. You don't need to hire an attorney. You could if you want, but that will cost money, a couple $100. You don't necessarily need to do that to complete this form. And then the idea of a living will. See, it's kind of like three things. You have the most form, got the living will, got the healthcare proxy. The most form and the living will kind of cross over into each other, but the living will is very common for me to say to a patient, do you have a living will? They go, oh, yeah, I got all my finances. I'm like, well, that's not your living will. That's your financial will. That's your estate. They were talking about your living will, your wishes, your medical wishes. So it's a legal document that says if I'm ever in a certain condition, I do or do not want this done. And then the healthcare proxy's job is to enforce that. Also, we all have stories of someone who comes in with a living will, and we look at it, or a most form, and all of a sudden the proxy is basically saying, do everything. And that really puts us in a bind. First of all, it's almost always at the wrong time. It's in the middle of the night. It's 2 a.m. in an emergency room on a Saturday morning. And now we have a document saying one thing, and we have a healthcare proxy saying something else. So it's very important that your healthcare proxy understands your wishes and be prepared to enforce your wishes. Because that type of conflict really is unfortunate and it never really ends well. I mean, usually it just prolongs whatever's going on.
It's important to know the most form should be updated once a year.
Yeah. And there's a part of the form that's you're supposed to bring it with you if you have to go into the hospital. And then whoever's admitting you is supposed to review it, and there's a little spot where you sign it that you reviewed it.
It's also in your chart, so if you're ever hospitalized, usually the hospital can contact your doctor's office and get that.
Right, it's already scanned. You're allowed to revoke it, at which point you can do a completely different form if your wishes change. I mean, again, that takes time. I like the process to be not so time-intensive. It's a weird form, too. It really it makes you list witnesses to the decision, but doesn't make the signature of the witnesses required. I always thought that was a little unusual. Usually, you have to prove that there are witnesses. Anyway, so we'll revisit that subject in February. So what did we learn today, Robin?
We learned about platelets.
Platelets.
And COVID.
And COVID. And then we talked about care management, how that might be a significant component of someone's health care. We talked about etiquette. We always do talk about etiquette. Yeah. Etiquette's a two-way street, by the way. The doctor's office has to have etiquette, and the patient has to have etiquette, and hopefully it all works out.
I'd like to wish everyone a good Martin Luther King Day.
Right, a meaningful Martin Luther King Day.
Meaningful, and just a shout out to all those guys out on the road today, and thanks for all your hard work.
Yeah, my neighbor, he couldn't wait to get his car, his toy out.
Yep, the roads are in great shape, Robin and Dr. Stamberg. The roads are in great shape right now. Pretty good shape. I mean, considering the circumstances and almost a foot of snow.
All right, so we're going to be back in February. We actually this is our last show for January.
Ah, and good. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Okay.
And we
thank you, Dr. Eric Stamberg and Robin Baker, for being with us today. Any last words?
What'd you say?
Wish you all the best.
Any last words?
Always want to thank the Maxwell family, too, so thank you. Thank you, Dan.
Absolutely. Okay. And good. We're toning down right now, and it's 8:59 a.m. And this last portion of Kingston Community Radio was brought to you by Ulster Savings Bank. Many locations throughout the Mid-Hudson Valley, one near you. And it's Monday, January 17th, and still about 29 degrees here in Uptown Kingston. Thank you for sharing the morning with us and participating in Kingston Community Radio, KCR, AM 920 and 92.5 FM, and our live streaming on mykcr.org. Talk radio at its best. Inspired discussions of, by, and for the community. And we thank Robin Baker and Dr. Eric Stamberg for bringing us Medical Mondays. And we invite you to be with us tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. with a terrific Tuesday. And from this point forward, we thank you. And we now return you to Magic 92.5.